They all died in Death Valley except me. My flashlight swept across 5 lifeless bodies inside the RV, their faces frozen in various expressions of agony. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. Emergency services, what's your emergency? My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. I'm on Highway 190 in Death Valley. Everyone in our RV is dead. Sir, can you confirm your exact location? We're dispatching units immediately. The words fell from my mouth like stones. About 5 miles past Stovepipe Wells, heading east. Nevada plate RVD 318. 5 people dead. I'm the only survivor. Part 1. An hour and a half later, sirens pierced the desert silence. I huddled against a rock formation 10 yards from the RV, wrapped in a mud-stained jacket, clutching a dying power bank with numb fingers. The forensics team, state troopers, and local detectives arrived almost simultaneously. 6 of us had rented this RV for a Death Valley expedition. Now 5 corpses sat twisted in their seats, still buckled in. Jake, our self-appointed leader, slumped over the steering wheel, his forehead pressed against the horn that made no sound. Madison in the passenger seat had her mouth frozen mid-scream, eyes wide with terror. In the back, Tyler, Marcus, and Ken the photographer were contorted in various positions, some curled up, others thrown back, their faces locked in expressions of extreme pain or confusion. No visible wounds. As if life had simply been ripped from their bodies. I couldn't look anymore. My stomach churned violently. A detective wrapped in a thick jacket approached, flashlight beam hitting my face. You said you all celebrated reaching the highest point yesterday, had some drinks, then you fell asleep and woke up to find them dead? I nodded, shivering. Yes. What time did you fall asleep? I struggled to think through my frozen brain. Around 10 p.m., I think. Just after we passed Telescope Peak. I was exhausted. What was everyone doing when you last saw them? Ken was photographing the stars. Jake was driving. Marcus and Tyler were discussing tomorrow's route. Madison seemed to have altitude sickness, she was resting with her eyes closed. The detective's gaze cut through me like a blade. They're all dead. Why are you alive? I stared back, lost. Why was I the only survivor? We'd all endured the same altitude at 11,000 feet. Drank the same whiskey. Suffered the same exhaustion from days of desert hiking. But they died. And I lived. Seeing my silence, the detective's voice softened slightly, though the probing remained. Anything else you want to add? I hesitated, then whispered, there's something I don't know if it was real or a dream. While I was sleeping, I thought I heard someone calling my name, saying they were cold. So cold. Did you wake up? I shook my head numbly. Terror had wiped my memory clean. I couldn't remember how I'd woken, how I'd discovered their bodies, or even how I'd gotten out of the RV. When consciousness returned, I was already calling 911. The detective saw my condition and stopped questioning, leading me to a heated patrol car. Dawn broke over the desert. Through the window, I watched forensics and investigators work tirelessly. Preliminary assessment, complex cause of death. Highly suspected acute altitude sickness leading to cardiac arrest or pulmonary edema, possibly combined with carbon monoxide poisoning or hypothermia. A bespectacled medical examiner removed his outer gloves, voice muffled by the wind. Due to individual variations, some may have lost consciousness instantly while others experienced brief agony. Time of death concentrated between 1 and 3 a.m. Detective Rodriguez, the lead investigator, turned to me. You were in the same vehicle, experienced the same altitude and temperature? I nodded, throat dry as sand. Rodriguez studied me with an evaluating gaze but changed. Tactics. You're certain you fell asleep around 10 p.m. and didn't wake once? Noticed nothing unusual? I tried to remember, head pounding. I don't think so. I had altitude sickness, took medication, slept like the dead. Rodriguez squinted thoughtfully. Rodriguez, the RV interior was relatively sealed but windows had gaps not airtight. The me added, strange thing is, all 5 maintained relatively peaceful positions. No signs of violent struggle, which doesn't match typical acute altitude sickness patterns. Expressions mostly showed pain, frozen, or confusion. Like they died. In their sleep? Rodriguez's voice dropped lower. The me nodded. Even stranger, the doors. All 4 doors and the rear hatch were locked from inside. Central locking engaged. Keys in the ignition, engine off. Windows closed except for a small gap in the passenger side for ventilation. Meaning, Rodriguez surveyed the stark desert cliffs, this RV was completely sealed from the inside during and after the incident. No external interference. No one left. I pulled the blanket tighter, knuckles white. The sealed can metaphor suffocated me. Why had they locked the doors? Part 2. Rodriguez closed his notebook and looked at me again. During this trip, was anyone feeling unwell? Especially before getting in the RV? I was silent for a moment. Madison had severe altitude sickness. She threw up when we stopped for photos at Dante's View. Jake mentioned chest pains yesterday while driving, but said it was an old issue. A forensic tech approached. Detective, the dash cam memory card is missing. Empty slot. We've searched everywhere possible in the vehicle. Rodriguez's sharp gaze turned to me. You know about the dash cam? Where's the card? I shook my head blankly. I was in the back corner seat, fell asleep right away. Didn't notice. Before departure? Usually Jake and Ken handled equipment. Ken managed most tech as the photographer. Rodriguez stared at me, his gaze sharp but not malicious, just intensely oppressive. Strange. You wake up to find everyone dead, yet noticed nothing during. The dashcam card vanishes, and you know nothing. You seem to only know you're alive. Nothing else. I looked at him weakly. Officer. I had severe altitude sickness and slept deeply. I don't drive, so I wouldn't know about dash cams. Rodriguez stopped questioning me. The bodies needed transport. Massive paperwork awaited. At the temporary command post in a local station, I was brought along. The heater blazed, but I felt no warmth. Hours later, Rodriguez returned, placing a DSLR camera on the table. Ken's prized equipment, now covered in dust. Listen to this. He pressed play, eyes locked on my face, watching for any micro-expression. The camera's internal mic had captured distorted audio, full of static and howling wind, but voices remained clear. First came violent, painful gasping and retching, then Jake's hoarse scream, "Can't breathe. Open the windows. Open the fucking windows." The sound of hands pounding the door controls followed. Then Tyler's panicked, breaking voice, "Won't work. Central locking's dead. Jake. Jake, what's wrong?" Marcus crying out, "He's having a heart attack." Convulsing. Jake seizing. Ken. Phone. No signal. Help. Chaos erupted. Ken's rapid breathing and camera operation sounds, as if trying to use it as a light source or document something. In the background, Madison's voice, so weak it was barely audible, cold, so cold. And in the recording's final seconds, amid desperate chaos and weakening gasps, Ken's voice exploded in a near-mad scream with his last strength. "Sarah. Wake up. Wake the fuck up. Look what you've done." The recording ended with a harsh static. Silence reclaimed the room, broken only by crackling wood in the stove. My mind went completely blank. Ken's final curse-like scream exploded repeatedly in my head. I don't know. I was asleep. I really heard nothing. Ken's camera was on, resting on his lap. This recording began at 1:33 a.m., ended at 1:46 a.m. In the recording, during their final moments, they kept calling your name. Rodriguez leaned forward, pressure mounting like a mountain. Especially Ken. He believed you knew what was happening, believed it was what you've done. How do you explain that? I don't know. I raised my head sharply, my voice unconsciously shrill. I was asleep. When I woke they were dead. I don't know why he said that. I did nothing. He was calling for me to wake up too, wasn't he? Rodriguez saw my agitation and softened his tone. Let me ask differently. You said you heard someone calling your name, couldn't tell if it was real or a dream. Can you be more specific? I slumped back, drained of strength, voice weak. I felt someone pulling me. Shaking me, telling me to wake up. Very loud, chaotic. I felt sick, consciousness fading, like in a dream. Rodriguez picked up the camera, his tone terrifyingly low. Have you considered it wasn't a dream? They really were desperately trying to wake you. And you didn't respond. Ice-cold dread crawled up my spine. Those blurred, twisted dream images suddenly became crystal clear, concrete. I seemed to see Jake's agonized face pressed against the wheel, Madison's paper-white complexion, Ken using his last strength to lift the camera toward me. Eyes full of incomprehensible anger and accusation. Why didn't you wake up? Rodriguez's voice pierced my daze like an ice pick. They drank the same alcohol, had the same altitude sickness, yet everyone woke except you who slept so deeply. Even with altitude sickness, you weren't comatose from oxygen deprivation or you'd be dead now. So why, when they shook you and screamed at you, desperately trying to wake you, did you remain asleep, oblivious to everyone dying? Why couldn't I wake up? Why was I the only survivor? What happened during my unconsciousness? Massive fear flooded my mind. I grew increasingly panicked, terrified. What was your relationship with them? Rodriguez shifted topics again, though his eyes remained sharp. I took a deep breath, trying to find calm. We were backpackers who met online. Chatted before the trip, got along okay on the road. Jake was experienced, led the group. Ken loved photography. Tyler and Marcus were pretty outgoing. Madison was weaker physically but easygoing. Any conflicts? Even minor friction? I hesitated. Yesterday at the ranger station, my permit photo had issues. Delayed us about 20 minutes. Jake was unhappy, called me dead weight. Things got awkward, but it passed. The others? Tyler smoothed things over. Marcus said nothing. Ken fiddled with his camera. Madison was sick, probably sleeping. I didn't notice. Did they show any rejection toward you? He pressed more directly. Like group exclusion? I fell silent. Details I deliberately ignored surfaced, my suggestions ignored during route discussions, my food portion always last, standing at photo edges. Was that exclusion? Rodriguez seemed to catch my silence, producing an evidence bag containing Ken's phone. He opened WhatsApp, found a temporary group called Death Valley Daredevils, showing an unsent message timestamped 015. Jake, stay sharp, we'll be safe past the peak. I'll drive the late shift. If that woman's still dizzy, just let her sleep permanently, don't expect help from a female, dead weight. Brief replies followed. Tyler, okay Marcus, got it Ken, yep. 10 minutes later, they entered the death zone. 30 minutes later, the recording began. I stared at the glaring, that woman, and, sleep permanently, dead weight, feeling ice in my veins. So I was just baggage to the leader. My face darkened, lips pressed white. Rodriguez handed me a tablet, asking, you know you had two groups? I looked up confused. You and Jake, Ken, the six of you were in Death Valley Daredevil's full group mainly for planning and splitting costs. But this group, Rodriguez pointed at the screen, was where they privately vented and strategized. You really never noticed their attitude? Light from the screen reflected on my vacant face. How could I not notice their hostility? In Beatty finding lodging, when the cheap motel didn't have enough rooms, Tyler had messaged, extra woman is such hassle, why don't we handle it like last time, might even have some fun. When altitude sickness made me walk slowly, falling behind by dozens of yards, I heard Jake tell Ken in a low voice, if she can't keep up, we'll ditch her at the next supply point. Though I didn't fully understand their intentions, the malice in their eyes was unmistakable. Sarah, were you ever angry at them? Rodriguez put away the tablet, watching me with subtle scrutiny. My voice was hoarse. Yes. Was there ever a moment you wished they'd encounter trouble? Or wanted this miserable trip to end early? Even in an extreme way? His question precisely dissected emotions I'd tried to hide. I raised my head sharply, meeting his calm yet penetrating gaze. I was just unhappy with their treatment. I didn't harm them. Don't accuse me because you can't find the killer or understand what happened. But I have evidence you're not innocent. Rodriguez smiled coldly, handing me a photo from Ken's camera our group at Badwater Basin. I sat on the farthest rock, hugging my knees, bundled in a puffy jacket, no smile, eyes distant. The others clustered around the picnic blanket, Jake holding a whiskey bottle, Ken making AV sign, Tyler and Marcus fighting over crackers, Madison wrapped in a blanket sleeping. They formed a tight, happy center with food and drinks. And I was like an accidental photobomber. You said you fell asleep around 10 p.m., but this photo was taken after 11 p.m. You were clearly with them, not asleep. Sarah, you've been lying from the start. You're the killer of 5 people. Part 3. I stared at my figure in the photo, pupils dilating in disbelief. Then I looked at Rodriguez, trembling. Officer, how can you suspect me? I'm a survivor but also a victim. You're accusing me of murder based on one photo. Do you know what psychological damage false accusations cause? I said I might have fallen asleep around 10, not definitely. I had altitude sickness, my mind was fuzzy. And I'm just a woman, how could I kill 5 strong men? Rodriguez stared intently at my face. True, seems unlikely. Suddenly, the me handed Rodriguez a freshly printed report, still smelling of ink. His time of death doesn't match the others. With that, he circled Madison's name heavily with his pen. Hearing this, I straightened as if pricked by a needle, looking curiously at the report. Rodriguez noticed my reaction. Asking the me calmly, what do you mean? The me flipped to the report's charts, voice low with exhaustion. Body temperature, rigor mortis, corneal clouding all show significant differences from the other 4. Death occurred nearly 2 hours later. Considering altitude's effect on decomposition rates, we calculate death was about 2 hours after the others. The room fell silent. The me continued, moreover, he had no altitude sickness. Blood oxygen saturation, organ condition completely normal. Impossible to be weak and constantly sleeping. Every eye in the room turned to me. My blood seemed to freeze instantly. Impossible. Madison was clearly unwell, always wrapped in a blanket resting. I cried out, voice jarring in the quiet room. The photos. The photos you showed me prove Madison looked unwell. True, he was weakly holding a blanket, resting. Rodriguez re-examined the photo. The ME's tone was uncompromising, physiology doesn't lie. No altitude sickness whatsoever. And cause of death was cyanide poisoning. Murder. Rodriguez's gaze returned to me. Could Madison have been playing a sick person? A chill shot from my tailbone to my skull. Madison had been faking illness? What was his purpose? I asked curiously, so Madison was the real killer? But why spare me? Rodriguez smiled. Indeed, why spare you? After all, he didn't even spare himself. Sarah, did you know these people before? Rodriguez immediately turned to me, eyes blazing. No, I just found random backpackers online. Never expected this. My mind was in chaos. Know of any grudges between Madison and the others? Rodriguez continued. I thought hard. Jake apparently stole Madison's girlfriend before, but Madison said it was nothing. Said it was just a woman, if Jake wanted her, he could have her. A bone-chilling thought emerged uncontrollably. You mean Madison killed the other 4 for revenge, then committed suicide? Rodriguez nodded. Could be interpreted that way. But I found something more interesting. Sarah, these people died differently, but their fingers all formed a remorseful gesture. Who were they apologizing to? I don't know. I really know nothing. My voice broke completely, thick with tears, explaining in confused panic. I don't know any gesture. I was terrified, fled the RV immediately, hid nearby, and called 911. I noticed nothing else. I spoke incoherently, trying to mask my panic with confusion and fear. Sarah. Rodriguez's voice turned severe, with undeniable penetration. Look at me. Answer my question. What does this gesture mean? Who were they apologizing to? His shout exploded like thunder in my ears. My body shook violently. Under immense psychological pressure, a desperate cry burst out uncontrollably. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe they had guilty consciences. Maybe they finally knew they were wrong. Knew what they did to my sister. My voice cut off abruptly. I clamped both hands over my mouth. Eyes wide with extreme terror, pupils contracting violently. No. I screamed internally in despair. I'd exposed myself. The suffocating seconds of silence in the interrogation room were more torturous than any torture. It's over. All over. This thought drowned me like icy tide. 3 years of careful planning, methodical killing, perfect escape at the final step. Would it all be destroyed by this moment's loss of control? Rodriguez didn't immediately question me about my sister. Instead, he retrieved a clear evidence bag from the drawer. My gaze, with ominous premonition, focused involuntarily. Inside the bag lay one item. A photograph. A small color photo with worn edges. The photo showed a girl. She stood on a hillside covered in wildflowers, wearing a white cotton dress, smiling so brilliantly, so purely, like the clearest ray of high-altitude sunshine. Emily. My sister. My only blood relative in this world. How was this photo here? I'd clearly hidden it in. I shot from my soles to my crown. I unconsciously reached for my mud-stained backpack, always clutched close. The compartment, that extremely hidden compartment sewn between the waterproof layer and lining. Before departure, I'd carefully hidden this photo there. So concealed, how could it be discovered? How could it now be in police hands? In an evidence bag? My gaze fixed on that small photo, mind blank. Rodriguez spoke then. Sarah, you hid this photo very carefully, using waterproof material, sewn tightly. Through the evidence bag, extremely slowly, extremely solemnly, he turned the photo over. The back, originally blank, now clearly showed 4 words. Blood for blood. Boom. Something in my mind exploded completely. All pretense, calculation, and fear were shattered by these 4 bloody words. After our investigation. Your sister joined a backpacking group 3 years ago, also touring Death Valley. Coincidentally with those same 5 people. But your sister went missing afterward, still missing today. Sarah, don't you find today's events too coincidental? Ah. A scream so inhuman tore from my throat. I shot up from the chair, lunging desperately at the desk, at the evidence bag with the photo. My eyes instantly bloodshot, tears flooding out like a broken dam, mixing with snot and saliva, covering my face. Give her back. Give my sister back. I roared. Fingers clawing wildly at the bag. Rodriguez was prepared, sweeping evidence behind him the instant I lunged, while pressing my shoulders. Let go. Give my sister back. I struggled frantically with surprising strength, Rodriguez barely restraining me. You have no right to touch her. No right. She was so pure, she shouldn't hear these things. Don't discuss this in front of her, it'll dirty her ears. Those people deserve death. They're animals. No, worse than animals. They destroyed her. Part 4. I cried hysterically, body convulsing with extreme grief and rage. Those animals. My sister was only 19. Just graduated high school with the brightest future, and she was so kind. At 11,000 feet in Death Valley, starving and shaking, she gave her last energy bar to Ken, who complained of hunger. Gave her only altitude sickness medication to Marcus, who pretended dizziness. But she had a splitting headache. She even gave her sleeping bag to Jake, who said he was cold. She spent the night in single-digit temperatures in just a t-shirt. And then? My voice rose sharply, filled with boundless hatred. Then. Those beasts in human skin. They saw her weakness. Her severe altitude sickness. Her helplessness. They. Enormous pain nearly suffocated me. I gasped for air, tears flowing wildly. They took turns, violating her. Right in that cold RV. In Death Valley. My sister, until death, her eyes never closed. She didn't understand why she'd given them her food and water, why they did this to her. I raised my head sharply, bloodshot eyes glaring at Rodriguez with world-destroying madness. Then what? They panicked. Feared exposure. These cowards. Murderers. They used rocks to smash my sister's face. Threw her like garbage, down Death Valley's steepest cliff. My body curled with extreme pain, fingers clawing the table surface, nails nearly bending backward. I searched for her, searched 3 whole months. Climbed every rock. Below that cliff. Finally found backpack fragments, and I choked, barely able to speak, enormous grief strangling my throat. And a small piece, blood-stained, skull. I pounded my chest violently, making dull thuds, crying heart-wrenchingly. They didn't even leave me a complete body. Didn't even let me hold her one last time. The final words drowned completely in uncontrollable wailing. I collapsed in the chair, body shaking violently, like a rag doll completely emptied, left with only endless sorrow. Tears and snot covered my face, hair stuck to my cheeks, utterly wretched. Everyone in the room fell silent. Rodriguez's hand on my shoulder seemed to loosen slightly, his eyes showing shock and a trace of imperceptible sympathy. Blood for blood, the motive was crystal clear. My sister's tragic death ignited all this revenge. So you killed them? I raised tear-blurred eyes. I only said they deserved death. I didn't kill them. I hadn't acted yet when they died. Divine justice. Now. I have nothing to hide. I did plan to kill them, but I don't know why they died first. Sarah. Rodriguez's voice sounded again, not cold interrogation but eerily calm. I looked at him through blurred vision. He produced another item. A phone. An outdoor phone with cracked screen, covered in mud and dark stains. Madison's phone. My pupils contracted sharply. Impossible. I'd disposed of this phone. My mind raced frantically, trying to recall the disposal details. After killing Madison, I'd clearly pried it from his stiff hands, then threw it hard into that bottomless cliff. How could it be found? This phone, his voice quiet, was Madison's. Tech department worked hard to recover the last audio file. He paused, seemingly giving me time to digest this fatal blow. Then he pressed an inconspicuous button on the phone's side. Hiss, static. Crackling interference and howling wind, accompanied by heavy, labored breathing and suppressed pain, emerged from the tiny speaker. Madison's voice. That voice, intermittent, full of dying weakness and indescribable complex emotion. Sarah, you won, but also, lost, cough cough. Violent coughing from cyanide poisoning's respiratory distress, recording. I started when you came in, hidden, cloud, automatic. Madison, this bastard. He'd kept this final card. He'd never fully trusted me. He was also guarding against me. The recording continued, Madison's voice growing weaker. You used my guilt, made me help kill those four, didn't expect you'd even kill me. Should have been like, with your sister, raped then killed you first, let you bitch die in the wilderness. The recording captured my voice here. When did I use you? Wasn't it your own infighting? And you killing them, didn't you also want to kill me? This cyanide drink was meant for me, right? Too bad you grabbed the wrong one, poisoned yourself. Evil. Meets its match, what's that got to do with me? I'm just an innocent bystander. The recording ended abruptly. Deathly silence filled the interrogation room. The final evidence slammed directly into my face. I lost? No. In these suffocating seconds, as Rodriguez thought he'd completely nailed me to the crime board, waiting for my breakdown or excuses. The extreme terror, despair, and rigidity on my face receded like tide. I slowly raised my head. Tear tracks still crossed my face, eyes still swollen with moisture, mouth corners even drooping from crying. But the look in those eyes underwent earth-shattering, bone-chilling transformation. All vulnerability, all rage, all madness vanished in this instant. Replaced by ultimate, icy calm. I even raised my hand extremely slowly, using fingertips to gently, bit by bit, wipe away remaining tears. The movement unhurried, even elegant. Then my mouth corners curved upward, bit by bit. Not bitter laughter, not mockery, not desperate madness. A genuine smile. The smile when a carefully planned chess game reaches its final move, seeing your opponent finally fall into the fatal trap as expected. Detective Rodriguez. My voice was abnormally calm, even carrying strange gentleness. Audio evidence proves the killer murdered those four people, then drank his own poisoned beverage. Doesn't that count as guilty suicide? I don't understand. From beginning to end, I did nothing. Why treat me as a suspect just because my sister suffered inhuman abuse and I harbored resentment? I already said he hated them, but I'm just a woman. I couldn't do anything. My smile silently expanded in the harsh light. That recording. I tilted my head slightly, speaking innocently. From beginning to end, isn't everything Madison's confession? And my declaration of innocence? After all, I did nothing. Every step had proceeded exactly according to my plan. Without lifting a finger, using these people's evil nature, I made them destroy each other like dogs. And I truly did nothing.